stringing TPU parts, Nero's the reason we can't have nice things, and some updates on my Prusa XL. All this and more. PrintFix Friday, episode 114. Let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here and you're dealing with some print failures, hey, make sure to leave a like and get subscribed because we want to help you get back to printing with purpose. That's what we do here on the PrintFix Friday series. Now 114 weeks of doing it every single week. It's a lot of fun to help take a look at print failures, assess why they could have occurred, and try to present some ways of fixing them. And if you are struggling to get your printers running right, you can reach out to us on all the social medias. You can slide into those DMs. I mainly monitor Twitter, or am I supposed to say X? Or you can email us at YouTube at 3dmusketeers.com, and we'll do our best to help you getting back to printing with purpose. We've got some fun fails today, and if you guys stay tuned toward the end of the video, I'm going to be talking all about my Prusa XL, my experience with it so far, and what I have to think about the future, because I do like the machine, but it's certainly got a couple of quirks that we're working through. Maybe that's because of the alpha and beta firmwares and softwares, or maybe it's because I'm doing something wrong. Who knows? But let's jump right into it. First up, a fail from our Patreon Discord from Swerving Lemon, who has a hotend that's a little bit, crooked, if you will, and has been causing, let's just say, some small problems in their print. This is a Sovol SV06, although it could be the Plus. They're very similar from the outside. One's just bigger than the other. With this printer, while it does have an automatic bed leveling system, it can have the hotend come loose, which is what I believe has happened here. The SV06 and SV06 Plus use a couple of grub screws to hold the actual heat break into the rest of the hotend, and it's not an amazing design, but it's one that is often used in industry because, well, it's cheap to manufacture. And unfortunately, we can see some of the PEI plate just kind of all ground up in the nozzle with some filament leaking out to the side. What has happened here is that the nozzle has dragged across the print bed so hard that it's actually bent it and likely broken it. The best thing that you can do here is replace the heat break itself. However, we want to look at the further problem involved in this fail. With the SV06 and SV06 Plus, they have this weird quirk regarding the bed leveling where you have to level the bed, which is done automatically, and then do your Z offset, and then you must hit save in the printer or it's not going to remember what you did. That's a bit of a problem if you forget to do the save, because it's going to revert to the old ones. And in a case like this, there's not too much that you can do here. Yeah, it's good to check to make sure that hotend is not changing heights all that much, but chances are either one, the hotend itself has come loose, or two, they actually forgot to hit save and the machine reverted back to old settings for that Z offset and first layer. The best thing to do here is, unfortunately, you gotta get some new pieces. And for this, it's kind of an expensive endeavor. You gotta get a new flex plate. And if you're gonna get a new flex plate, I would look at upgrading. What I've noticed about the Sovol flex plate is that at least the white paint that's on it is very susceptible to coming off. So you might as well get something nicer. Now, that's not really inside of the print area, so you could just send it and not worry about it too much, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't immediately worried about this as well. See, you can't easily just put thread locker on it. I mean, you can, but if for some reason your heat break doesn't work as well as it should, that thread locker could get too hot, causing it to fail. If you do put some thread locker in it, make sure it's designed for somewhat higher temperatures, but go with the blue stuff or, something that's non-permanent would be the best bet here. If this does happen to you, replace the part. And it's why we've talked about having replacement parts on hand often, because this kind of thing can happen any point in time. And normally that's right when you need the machine to work for some reason. And as we come up closer to the holiday season, I know a lot of you are going to be utilizing these fun machines that can make pretty much anything that you want to make things for others, because sometimes people are really tough to shop for. And if you would like to see some of my favorite picks for models to make, or printers to get or accessories to get for the maker in your life, let me know in those comments below, because we can put together a video like that in the next few weeks. But there really is no going back from here. The damage has been done, and it's time to replace parts. I can't say that I would believe that there is a way to detect this before it gets too bad. If the nozzle is slowly falling, you might notice that your Z offset is changing even though you never changed it. But chances are the dumb quirk with these machines is likely, well, kicking them in the side for this one. If you've had an issue like this, let me know. At least for me, I make sure that those grub screws are tight, and I keep spare hot ends on hand should there ever be a problem. Next up, a fail from someone who I'd really like to interview, Jayy, who is an awesome cosplayer and just maker extraordinaire. They said, today I learned that if a TPU print fails, it can decide to attack the motor on your 3D printer. And ladies and gentlemen, we have the attack of the spaghetti monster. We also have the attack of the cat who's in my lap that really wants attention. I don't think I've ever had one like this, and this appears to be a lulzbot. It looks very similar to lulzbot construction, and I'm not certain if Jayy has a lulzbot, but I think he might. If that's the case, there's probably not too much you can do about it. TPU can string if you have issues with it, whether it's being too wet, and TPU gets wet very quickly. So if you have TPU out in the open, unless you're living in a desert or it's the middle of winter and you're not running humidifiers in your house for some reason, you likely need to dry TPU. And traditionally we say to print TPU out of a dry box, and that seems to help it out a lot more than, you know, just printing it in open air. In a case like this, just cut it off with some scissors. It's not that big of a deal. I have never seen this particular type of TPU failure, but it is one to definitely keep in mind, because when it globs around the motor shaft like this, that is enough to keep it so that your belts don't ride correctly on the motor pinion, creating absolutely some artifacting in the prints, but potentially also the belts skipping teeth because they're not actually gripping on those motor teeth themselves. So it's a really, really interesting TPU fail. I've never had one happen like this personally, but maybe you guys have. Victoria hasn't either. She wanted to sit in my lap, so you'll randomly see the cat. The best way to deal with this at this point is just to cut it off. If you wanted to use a torch, you could, but I'm noticing there's a lot of either oil or something on this motor as well. It's a good time to give it all a clean. When you have your machine parts, a good time to clean the rails, clean the motors, clean the shafts. There's a lot of gunk here. Let's get that gunk cleaned up and hope it doesn't happen again. I think Nero gets the hat trick. I'm fairly certain that's 3 weeks in a row for Nero. If not, I'm sure he'll find something for next week. This one is a rough one. Titled, "Okay, so we may be doing something else today. We will see." Nero built one of the KB3D stealth press kits, a kit that I would really like to build because we have an upcoming Voron trident, but until I can get the bamboo running, or end up just saying screw it, going to a more reliable machine, the trident is going to have to wait until we can get a machine running. I would like to print it all on a bamboo. I think it just sounds like fun, but it seems like that's a bit of a bottleneck right now, especially when we have the Jayy X+3 that has been running really, really well. I have been really enjoying that Jayy printer. We're gonna have an extended review coming out on that machine in a few months, but if you want, maybe we can do a short little video in the next couple of weeks, just kind of talking about my experiences with it so far. Suffice to say, it's pretty good. Anyways, this is a Voron 2.4, I'm fairly certain. And we have raw filament coming out of the hot end here. And upon further inspection, Nero continues to remind me why we just can't have nice things. I like Nero. If you guys don't know who Nero 3D is, go subscribe to him. We'll link to him in the description. He's a great content creator, does a lot of live streaming, and if you love Vorons, you're gonna love Nero. Go check him out. But yeah, this is a Revo Obsidian, and it didn't break where we've seen most Revos break. Normally the Revos will break right at the top of the copper there, or at the bottom of the copper. His broke halfway up the threads, which is a really, really tough place to break because now you absolutely have to get an easy out to pull everything out. And we can see the heater core does not look all that good either. Remember, the E3D Revo is a really cool system that allows you to cold swap nozzles with one hand. And now with E3D's brand new extruder Roto, which we were hoping to have by now, it's not here. And I don't know if it's going to be here before we go to Smurf. So if it's not, I'm just gonna take one. You better watch out, E3D. I'm coming for those rotos. They actually use a lot of 3D printing to create it, including metal 3D printing, which, I'm sorry, is just objectively freaking cool. But on the Revo Obsidian, which is a abrasive resistant nozzle, I think they're like $60 to $80. That's like 6 million Canadian dollar reduced, or at least that's what the current exchange rate was telling me. But this is not the first time I've seen this happen to people, and based upon where this broke occurred, I have a theory, and it's an unfortunate theory that seems to be a thing with Revos. They can back out. Vorons, and especially printers like Vorons, move so fast with crazy high acceleration, and because of input shaping, they're vibrating a lot. They're counteracting the vibrating with vibrating. These systems, because they can come out when they're cold, theoretically could slowly loosen over the course of a couple of days, weeks, or months as you're printing. And if it loosens during a print, you're likely not to see a ton of change. Your layers might be a little bit more squished than usual, but you might chalk that up to a slight filament inconsistency, maybe something going on with extruder pressure. It is something to be aware of, that if you have a nozzle that can be removed when it is cold, to make sure that you check it, that it is tight every single time you go to print, because if you don't, you can run into issues like this. And it's one of the drawbacks to the Revo system. Now, I love the Revo system. It's really great, and I find myself changing nozzles way more often because it's just simple. It's really, really simple. But the drawback is, if you break your heat break, you've also broken your nozzle, and there's really no way to fix it outside of reverse engineering the way that E3D does it, and I don't think that's going to happen for most of us. This nozzle gets to go in the big pile of shame, if you will. And I might also be checking that heater core, because I have a feeling that heater core didn't make it either, which that proper sucks. Sorry, Nero. Nobody likes waking up to that, because of course you can't even reuse that filament. It's all garbage. You have to start over. And it looks like it failed like most of the way through. We can see a pretty big part back there, and it's like it came detached from the build plate maybe, then the nozzle rammed into it somehow, maybe it started warping, then it came detached, and the nozzle collided. I really don't know. Fails like this are so difficult to determine without a camera, and the only thing that I can lead into is say, well, the break is higher up on the thread, so maybe it wasn't tight all the way. It is always good to check to make sure that your Revos or other cold swap nozzles are tight before you start a print. It takes half a second and is really cheap insurance. But it could have just been something motion related too. Next up, a fail from Abby Brown, or as they like to go by, Abby Math. Well, it's not clogged. I've never seen anything like this. My daughter spotted it on the other side from where I was looking. She thinks we should try printing with it. I think that's a bad idea. Thoughts? Yep. Yeah, we've got a nozzle here that is definitely broken. Take a look at this photo. So, I know how this happens. I'm guilty of it. I've never had it happen to me, but I'm guilty of the problem. This is from using a pair of flush cutters to clean your nozzle, or at least I'm fairly certain that's what caused this. And the reason I'm guessing this is we can see a lot of downward scratch marks. Like you put a pair of cutters on it and you use the cutters to basically clean the hot ends. Let me demonstrate. If you have a hot end and you're using the pair of cutters like this to go down the actual cone of it, it can and will leave scratches on brass nozzles because these are made of steel, hopefully, and that is made of brass, which is considerably softer than steel. This is a hardened steel nozzle, so other than maybe scratching it slightly, it's not going to do anything. But this is also why cheap nozzles are something you should be aware of. Nozzles that are made with the tightest tolerances, can have thin areas. And it's not the first time that we've seen a printer do this, where it's just blown a hole in the nozzle itself. We could be dealing with just wear and tear over time, but chances are, at least to me, this was from a cleaning accident that occurred. I would say try to print with it. You really don't have much to lose. The nozzle's already screwed anyways. What's worse, you get a blob of doom, heat it up, unscrew the nozzle, throw it away, and put a new one on. But that is certainly one of the most interesting nozzle fails, with a beautiful follow-up shot. Great photo on that. I love to see it. You can see the big hole that's in it. And if it was like a small pinhole, I would say, okay, maybe something wore through. But because it looks like a sheared off piece of brass, I think it might have been caused by something from the user. It's not impossible that the filament burned its way through, but it doesn't look like it's that thin right there. It looks like it is quite thin, but not thin enough that regular PLA would burn through. However, if you're using materials like glow-in-the-dark, wood fill, although that's not as abrasive, but it is somewhat abrasive, carbon fiber, glass fiber, any fiber-filled materials, it is best to look at a hardened nozzle, or if you can spring for the cash, a diamond nozzle. And if you guys want to see some new stuff coming from Diamondback, let me know, and we'll work with them to get it. But I'm going to be seeing those guys in just a couple of weeks' time. I am really excited to go check in with Mark and the entire team over at Diamondback at the Sanjay Mortimer Rep Rap Festival, where we're going to shave my head. It is 100% official. It is happening. We are going to be donating my hair to the Little Princess Trust over in the UK, because we can't travel back to the United States with hair that's considered human remains, and it's a thing. Even though it's my hair, they don't care.
Bars.
The top few donors, now E3D is going to pick the amount of top donors, whether it's just the top most donor or the top 3, whatever, will get to shave whatever they want into my head. So we're going to cut my hair for charity, buzz it to like a 2, and then we're going to deal with the rest of it as space for whomever gets the highest bid. And every penny of that goes directly to the Sanjay Mortimer Foundation to help neurodiverse individuals like myself, and maybe like some of you at home, get the help that they need to get started in this whole industry of making. It's a really, really great charity. And hey, if you're feeling extra generous, kick a couple of bucks to the Sanjay Mortimer Foundation. The bidding on the silent live auction online is already open, so if there is something that you'd like to get, that is a great time to do it. But yeah, if you guys want to watch me get 3 years of hair shaved off my head, tune in. We are going to try to live stream it ourselves. I have to figure out a way to do mobile live streaming. I think I'm just going to cheat and use a phone, because it's probably the easiest way to do it. But Miss Amber, of course, is going to have to do it unless I hold the phone. I guess I could hold the phone. That might be a little bit weird. I don't know. We're going to figure out a method so that we can do live streaming and be able to show you guys on our channel as well as on E3D's too. So come on out. Can be a lot of fun. Just like, you know, hitting that like button and the subscribe button. Those don't cost you a dime, but help the channel immensely in our ability to reach more people. And if there is other content that you guys are looking for, I would love to know your opinions down below, because the more input that we can get from you all as to the content that you want to see, the more fun content that we can make for you. I love making videos, but I also want to make things that you guys are going to enjoy. I've got a lot of stuff kind of saved up and ready, but I definitely want to know if there's anything that you all specifically want to see, other than the myriad of you that are yelling at me to do the Voron build. I know. Coming soon, TM. Just got my Elegoo Neptune 4 Max, and I am having terrible layer shifts. Does anybody know how to fix this? We've got layer shifts in the Y-axis. So this is a Neptune 4 Max, a big freaking bed slinger. By the way, Elegoo wants to send us either the Neptune 4 Pro or the Neptune 4 Plus. Which one do you guys want to see on the channel? I like the Pro because it has the segmentable heat bed. The Plus doesn't have that, which kind of sucks. But I think the Plus is a better value. I'd love to know your opinions. Let me know. Anyways, the Max is their big boy, the huge bed slinger that Elegoo makes, and 4 of the build plates from the Neptune 4 Max make up the build plate for the Orange Storm Giga, their ridiculously sized, crazy big volume 3D printer that we did not back on Kickstarter because I would rather pay a premium and get it a little bit later, but also because I don't have it is 6 feet from the edge of my desk to the edge of those shelves. I don't, it's less than 2 meters. I don't have space for a meter cube 3D printer like that. And yes, I know it's 800 X and Y, but it's 1,000 on its floor space requirements. It's a much bigger printer than you think. And while it'd be really cool to be able to print very large things, at this point in time, we would need another facility to be able to have a printer like that in our shop. This Neptune 4 Max is having issues in the Y-axis alone, which is good. If you have skipping or layer shifts in more than one axis, it can be a real pain to figure it out. Because this is a bed slinger and it's a fast bed slinger, chances are it's a pretty simple thing to do, and it is either your belts or the pinion on your motor. So the shaft on the motor has a gear on it. There are grub screws that hold the gear to the shaft. If the grub screws are loose, that gear won't turn when the motor turns, right? There'll be a little bit of backlash as the motor turns to catch the grub screw, then turns the other way to catch the grub screw. There'll be some backlash. I do think, though, this is belt skipping, so I would check to see how the belt tension is of this machine, and if it is a belt tension issue, go ahead and tighten up those belts. They should have a bit of twang to them, not too much toward a southern banjo, if you will, so maybe just below the Georgia line, because at least in Florida, you have to go north to go south. Floridians will get that reference. But once you've taken a look at those two things, from there we have to look at our print settings. And if you're running just stock print settings, then we can ignore the print settings and say it's probably not those. And instead we want to look at the motion system of the printer. We could also have drivers that are overheating, although on these clipper-based machines, it's not all that common as much as it used to be. On the old 8-bit machines, it was very common to see drivers overheat when you're trying to run them very fast because you have to turn up the current, and the drivers don't like that. With new modern drivers, especially ones from like Big Tree Tech, they gave us some 48-volt stepper drivers that can just put gobs of power into a stepper motor. It's insane what is possible these days for very little money, by the way. So I don't think it's going to be a stepper motor issue, or at least a stepper driver issue. I would check mechanical, or I would check belt and go from there. Last but certainly not least, an update on my Prusa XL. We recently completed the build on our Prusa XL, and we'll card to that video so you guys can take a look. That was a lot of fun. It took 3 live streams, I think it was about 8 hours total, and I think without the cameras, could probably do it in 4 to 5 hours. So if you get a mostly assembled or semi-assembled XL, it's probably a 4 to 6 hour build for you, and it was a lot of fun. The only thing I didn't like, and I mean, it ended up paying off and like looking really good at the end of the day, but it was absolutely doing the cable management. It was a rightful pain in the butt, and some of the photos weren't great, but it looks like people were paying attention. So we'll see if there are any updates for when you guys build your XLs. Did you order an XL? I'd love to know. We ordered the 5 tool head on launch day, November 18th. 2021 at 8:01 a.m. for those that are curious. But as you can see here, the part looks great, except the PLA is warping off the bed. This is a multi-material print. This is the big reason that I wanted the XL over something like a Bamboo Lab X1 Carbon, because it can do multi-material without purging. This part is actually a pretty decent part. It's about 330 millimeters long, and it's very, very lightly touching the build plate. The rest of it had to be sport material. We opted to utilize the multi-material function of the Prusa, print the main part in PETG with the support material out of PLA. This is my first time using a satin build plate as well, so that I'm still trying to get used to. I'm incredibly used to dealing with the regular smooth build sheets, and in fact, when we go to Prague relatively soon here, I'm gonna pick one up at the factory because I want one and I can get it home way faster than I can if I just ordered it. In this particular case, the PLA warped, but I don't know if it's the PLA's fault or if it's the fault of the PETG. Now, this machine is out in my garage. My garage is unair conditioned and it is uninsulated, and it's Florida, so it is relatively warm, it is relatively humid, and overall, it's just not a great environment for 3D printing. And I don't know if that's the PETG warping up and because it is slightly attached to the PLA that it's taking the PLA with it, or if it's the PLA warping. I honestly don't know, but I will say PETG with PLA supports is super, super cool. And when we did get a different part to stick like that, My gosh, it was great. The sports just popped right off. It was a beautiful underside to the part. Literally, it looked like it was a top layer. That's what we love about tool changers and why I was really, really waiting to get it. But yeah, this was a fun one. Also, this was the print where I decided to see and test the limits of my XL. You can't really see it all that well here, but with the light, you can see the layer shifts that have occurred here. We have found a few things about the XL. Now, I'm running the Input Shaper Alpha firmware, so grain of salt that, because things can absolutely change. But above 500 millimeters a second and 5,000 millimeters per second squared of acceleration, we start to see issues with the machine skipping steps during travel. Now, I haven't gone through and figured out which of those two is more likely to cause the problem. My assumption is it's the acceleration and it's not the speed. Stepper motors actually move quite fast. It's the acceleration side they're not all that good at, especially if the drivers aren't really turned up to the nines. Prusa did not build this thing to win speedboat races. That was never its plan. Its plan is to be able to do multicolor, multi-material parts. But what we can see is often the machine recovers quite well. Now, obviously, there are some cases there where it did not recover very well. But again, it's crashing like 4 times per layer. It's not like this was crashing once every now and then. It was crashing all the time. And how did we solve it? I just turned the speed down to 90 when I realized that it was doing it. Because I start the print and I go inside. I don't watch the machine. And I walked out and it was flashing red because it was crashing right when I walked outside. So I waited, I watched, and it crashed quite a few more times. So I turned the speed down to 90 and it didn't crash the rest of the print. Actually worked out pretty well. But there have been some issues that users have been reporting with the XL, mainly dealing with the way that the tool head attaches to the carriage itself. I think that has a lot to do with the way these machines are assembled. When you screw in the holders for the tool heads, you really have to torque those bolts down. In fact, you saw me have this issue in the third stream where I thought I got them tight, then I wiggled the mount and the mount was loose. So I just had to keep going until it got tight. I do agree with some of the people that having only a single bolt connecting the 5 tool heads to a rail, like there's 1 bolt per tool head, seems a little bit odd. And having 2 bolts on 2 different surfaces of some aluminum extrusion would be way safer. But you can't really argue with results. The parts that we've gotten off look absolutely beautiful. And if you don't believe me, here's a part from a stream earlier. This is Jayy made in a custom elixir that we made at Printed Solid. We'll card that video so you guys can take a look, but this is raw off the XL, 0.25 millimeter layers. I mean, absolutely beautiful looking part. So my XL works fine. I know that some people are having issues with theirs, and this was obviously just a single tool head, so, you know, grain of salt that as well, but it was a really, really good looking print. I was very impressed with 0.25 layers. There are some things that we can tune up. I mean, obviously the Z-seam on the front of Jesse's chest there. Idiot brain here didn't put it on the back side, put it on the front side because I didn't bother to think about that. You know, I could clean up the Z-seam. There are some small artifacts from retraction, but like overall for an alpha firmware and running the 2.7 Prusa Slicer beta, the machine's running great. I'm just running into issues where I think I just haven't gotten used to the build plate. So if you have any tips or tricks for the satin sheet, let me know in those comments below, because I am debating if I want to just say screw it. I know the smooth plates. I like the smooth plates. I'll just buy smooth plates. And I do actually I have the satin sheets for the MK3s. I just never put them on because I've never really needed to. They just work. Love to know your guys' thoughts down in those comments. This one has been quite a wild ride. I mean, 3 live streams, half a container of gummy bears. Miss Amber was helping out here and there. Don't worry. She got her good share of gummy bears, but it was a really, really fun build, and I would absolutely do it again. In fact, I'd love to do it again because it was a great build. And I think I've learned a lot about the build from the first time around for when we do it the second time around. But yeah, I want to give a massive thank you to all of you that have been tuning into the channel lately. Our latest channel member supporters, our latest Patreon members, our latest PayPal supporters, whose names are all listed right next to me at the $5 tier and higher. And yes, coming soon on Printables and Thangs, that is coming up And we're going to be releasing some custom files that I've been making recently for our camera gear, which we've showed off in previous PrintFix Fridays. And I think it's actually pretty cool. Everything from TPU feet for the monopod's tripod feet, all the way to custom holders for microphone receivers and other components as well to help make filming on the run easier. Thank you all for what you all do in making these videos possible, because without your generous support, these kind of things wouldn't happen. And if you do want to support us, links are in that description down below, and you can support for as little as $1 a month on certain platforms. But that is all I have for you guys today on this 114th episode of PrintFix Friday. Stay safe out there. Don't forget to call your loved ones. And as always, keep making awesome. And hey, if you're in the United States or you celebrate Thanksgiving, please don't forget to call your loved ones. We have a big holiday coming up that is supposed to be for family, even though it was never really about family to begin with, but I don't want to get into the history of it. Take it for its face value. Call your freaking family. When was the last time they heard from you? Anyways, take care. Hi. Every single time. It's like I can be talking for hours and you don't care. But as soon as I start recording, somehow you know that I'm recording. And that means you need constant attention. Ma'am, why were you just biting me? What was the purpose of that? Go on. Go on. Thank you. It's like you want all the attention and then all of a sudden you want no attention. Why, cat?